You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I am Sherry Lipp, Marketing Manager at Stimulus Technologies, and today I am here with Nathan Whittacre, CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and we are going to be talking about technology uses for personalizing the customer service experience. Hi, Nathan.
Harry, thanks everybody for being here.
So, when we're talking about using technology, how would you define that in terms of customer interaction?
I think in one way or another, customers are interacting with businesses digitally all the time. And, back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, it may not have been so much. Maybe the most digital interaction would be over the phone. But today, from the initial search for a customer or service provider or a company or a service provider all the way through you know the service process, customers are working with companies digitally. So you think about interaction through websites, interaction through email, mobile apps, chat bots if you're getting a little bit more advanced. In the end, this customer interaction digitally allows for a much more seamless and easy way for a customer to connect to the right people at the right time inside your company.
And so, with increasing automation, what challenges do you think businesses are facing when it comes to personalizing customer service?
I think it's a two-edged sword, right? The automation allows for faster response of common issues. Think about calling up a company that has an interactive voice response system, and you can get your account balances for your credit card or bank statements, or maybe pay a bill. Or I think you, Sherry, shared a story not too long ago about being able to return an item with a chatbot on the website easily. You didn't have to interact with a human, and it was a seamless experience. So, certainly there's ways with technology to allow for faster interaction without having to get a human involved. But it does depersonalize the experience for especially small businesses. A lot of times I think, people want to do business with a small business because you get that personal interaction, that personal feel. They're fine dealing with a large corporation if and not be personalized, because that's kind of the expectation. Even if you got with a person, you'd never speak to that employee again. But with a small business, you're often dealing with the same people over and over again. And so if you depersonalize that, you lose that key aspect of being or working with a small business.
And we know there's a lot of technology for automation. Obviously, we've talked about that on here and just now. But is there technology that might help businesses with customer service? Because obviously, people get frustrated, when they're trying to reach a person and they can't, or the choices on the automated chat are not giving them the right thing, and they can't seem to get to anybody.
If any company is developing some automated interaction system, whether it's a chat bot on a website or with your automated attendant on your voice system, I think there should be an immediate ability to get to a person. Don't let technology take over everything, because that again, especially for small to mid-sized businesses, that takes away the advantage that those businesses have over the large companies. And so just getting to a real person as quickly as possible, if that's what the individual wants, is the best thing. But I think in the back end though, the customer service representatives or whoever is, communicating with the customer can have some automated tools to allow the experience to be fast and seamless so that they can get information readily available about the customer and solve the customer's problem quickly.
So, do you think there's what technology tools do you think are good for improving the customer experience?
So, thinking again about the small to mid-sized business, implementing a good customer relationship management, a CRM software, I think really helps with that. Especially as you're growing as a company, moving from one person to multiple people dealing with customers, having a centralized repository where all that information is available really helps with the customer experience. So no matter who you're talking to, they have the same relevant information. And kind of extending beyond that, if you think about, as we've talked about on this podcast a lot, is AI is really helping with faster response times and be able to gather information quickly about issues. And so if you can incorporate some AI systems into your CRM for those faster response times, is great. I think the other thing too is, as we think about growing companies, one of the things that I hear, a lot, and we experience as a growing company over the years is replicating the experience across everybody inside the company, and I think that's something that growing businesses really have an issue with. Is the owner was able to serve the customer one way, the sole entrepreneur, and then he hired a few people, and then gets frustrated because those new employees aren't serving exactly the way that he would. But that sole entrepreneur had all that information in his head and has a difficult time relaying that to his entire team. So whether you have like an internal wiki system, or a database system that contains a lot of information so that you can disseminate that to the entire team as the company grows, so you don't always have to be going back to that one person that has all the knowledge. And that also, if you just have one person that has all the knowledge, it really limits the ability for the company to grow. So as you think about developing and growing a business, you also have to think about data dumping people's heads into some type of repository that's searchable, to get that information out. I think the other thing is developing good policies and procedures in place, and developing some automation around those. Um, so, for example, if you have a procedure on a new customer intake, how to put them in in the CRM, information that you need to gather, that should be documented. You can use tools like Visio and a Word document to describe that process. And as you develop those systems and processes, it does lead to a similar customer experience, no matter who is talking to the customer. So those are some great, especially when dealing with growing companies, I think that a company, especially the entrepreneur, needs to think about how they can get that stuff out of their head and into everybody else's hands.
The training employees so that everybody's capable of helping reminds me that there was a Saturday Night Live sketch a little while back, and it was somebody was trying to call to cancel service, and they got transferred so many times they ended up at Domino's Pizza. And I'm sure we've all kind of had that that feeling before. So yeah, I definitely think you can't automate everything.
Yeah, no, there's difficulty. And another thing that we did when we were growing is, again, I was running the company for so long. I had a lot of information in my head, and we used to joke because we didn't have 20 years ago, we didn't have a documentation system. And we used to call it like our tribal songbook. And we would sing songs to the other technicians as they came on board, because the only thing we could do is transmit that information verbally. We wouldn't literally sing. You wouldn't want to hear any of us doing that, but that's what we would joke about it. And then literally our first manual that we wrote, our team member that was helping us put that manual together came up to us and said, "Well, what do we call the manual?" I said, "It's got to be called the Tribal Songbook, because that's what it's been. That's it. Those are our songs that we would sing."
The
And
oral
so,
tradition.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, um, the first thing, whether you're going to automate anything at all, you have to get the information documented somewhere. And there's some great tools to do that. Some of them are very industry specific. We use some, as a company, we use some industry specific tools, but, there's software like internal wiki software, like Wikipedia, but for your internal side and only your employees can have access to it. That's a great repository. Or if it's even just like Word documents that are stored in a SharePoint site that everybody has access to, is another way to do it.
And so to keep to make things personal, some businesses might want to collect some personal data on people, their birthdays or anniversaries, or even like favorite things. Are there privacy issues businesses should be aware of when they're doing that?
Yeah, definitely. So there's state and federal laws around collecting private information, because hackers do want that. Even birthdays are key. Key pieces of information for hackers to use, because um, those are often used as secondary authentication into different systems. So it's really important that any data that you store, that you have it encrypted and secure, and you need to ensure that most of these laws require you to have a published privacy policy. We all get those letters in the mail from random companies, our insurance companies, our banks, that say this is our privacy policy, and they're doing that. They're sending those out because there's legal requirements for them to send those out. Uh, you know, Most businesses, you can post them on the website, refer people back to that, and any policy changes that you need for their privacy. Um, you can update the website, but it's important that you develop those privacy policies to be legal. Um, California has some really stringent ones, and then if you're doing any business overseas, GDPR in Europe has some really stringent policies too. So you just have to have transparency on how you're collecting information and how it's stored and how it will be used. I mean, you can't just share that information with a marketing vendor um, to market to people or to their spouses or their kids or whatever it may be. Whatever information you've collected, you have to be really careful about how you're dealing with that.
And a lot of businesses, and we've all experienced this too. There's a way to kind of have that personalized, like we know you without being creepy, like calling you 5 seconds after you visit their website. Or what kind of tips do you have on that?
I think it's personal. I think whatever you want to define as a company, just have it consistent. I think I mean, it is kind of creepy, but it's also interesting that, companies can identify that through cookies to know that you visited their website and then call you up. I certainly have had it a number of times, and um, there from a marketing standpoint, you and I think have talked about that in the past. Is wow, that would be amazing, but it certainly freak people out. So you got to just have a policy. I think it should be a natural flow. And you have to be accurate on it. I mean, I think my personal opinion is unless you're sure that that person really visited your website, it makes you look bad. I know I've received a number of calls from companies that said, "Oh, I see that you've reached out to us for XYZ product," and I have no idea who they're talking about. Um, that is an issue. Is you have to ensure that they've really attempted a contact. So have an easy form fill on your website, or maybe a chatbot or something like that, so that they've had some type of interaction before reaching out to them via email or phone call. Because if I think those systems that allow you to contact people, is it feels like an invasion of privacy for the individuals.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I know we all think that like we talk about something and then we get online and there's an ad for it right away. Even though they claim there's no way that could be. But
Oh yeah, it happens. Well, actually, Siri, that's one of the big things that Apple recently did is, there's been some restrictions that have been placed on that, the cross app communication. You have to opt into that now, to allow those apps to share. And Apple and Android has that ability in their phones to say, well, if Siri heard them talk about Domino's Pizza, and then suddenly it's advertised to all your social media accounts that you just discussed Domino's Pizza, and now suddenly you're going to get ads for Pizza Hut and Papa John's and Papa Murphy's and all the other pizza joints around, or maybe Domino's, and that's that cross app sharing. So um, you know that is a concern, I think, for most people from a privacy standpoint, but it is, from a marketing standpoint, it's a great thing to collect that information. So
Yeah.
there's a balance, right?
Yeah, and of course, yeah, it always asks you can ask your app not to track what you're doing, and so people can kind of take advantage of what they can put up with.
Yes.
Um, um, so how can smaller businesses use technology, customer service technology, to kind of compete with the larger companies while still providing that personalized service?
I think, again, I mentioned the CRM, make sure that you have something like a CRM in place. I think you can be more personal on social media is a great use of technology. Um, have different postings about the team and what the team's doing, maybe newsletters about and information of, about what maybe a project, maybe if you have an employee that has a special nonprofit that they're working with, and feature that. But I think the personalization around the people that you have inside your team so that they feel like they become part of the team is a huge advantage. I mean, if dealing with, we mentioned Apple just a second ago, dealing with a company that has tens of thousands of employees feels very different than a company with 10 employees or 20 employees. So having that personalization, getting to know through social media, through newsletters and things like that, I think helps that personal feel. And you can also, if you can collect information about what your customers' interests are in the CRM, and then put together programs, again, maybe community engagement programs around other your customers' interests, is a good thing. So if you can collect that information somehow through regular communication, your account managers, salespeople, your customer service people, putting that information in your database, and then you can identify ways to interact with your customers that would be better. And you could do things like targeting specific email marketing that is around your client's interests. Maybe even like if you have integrate. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, but if you have customers that do a certain line of business, and you can make introductions with other customers if they have that same interest. I mean, I have a passion for aviation, and if I have a company of vendor of mine that also deals in the aviation field, that's more interesting to me than somebody that doesn't. So if you can personalize the content around your client's interests, I think that makes that interaction even better.
Yeah, definitely. And just a note on CRMs. We've seen this on the news from time to time, but do not put notes about customers in the fields, in the merge fields that might get pulled for letters or email or something. But every once in a while, it pops up on the news that, it's usually if it's a negative, but negative or
Yeah.
positive, no notes in the
Yeah,
first name field.
yeah, you definitely don't want a letter going out saying, "Dear really bad angry customer,
You're
gone."
right. Yeah. So you gotta be
So,
careful about that aspect of it. But yeah.
yes.
Um, and what kind of KPIs do you think should be measured around this type of technology?
I think there's a lot of KPIs that you can gather from a customer service standpoint. The two big ones that are really big right now are your CSAT, your customer satisfaction score. And that's usually, a performance score. Heck, I see them even in bathrooms and in airports now. You're traveling along and there's a little kiosk as you leave the bathroom. Were you happy with your bathroom visit today? And I'm like, that's a weird place to put it, but you see it all over the place that, companies are, uh, looking for response on, how the customers are satisfied. So collecting CSAT scores. As a company, Stimulus Technologies, we post our current CSAT score on our website. So if you go to stimulustech.com, you can scroll down to the bottom and see what our current CSAT score is. And we have goals around that. And that also nicely integrates with Google reviews and other responses to increase your public visibility about your happy customers. The other one that's probably a big one that's been around for about 15 years now is your Net Promoter Score. If you've ever received one of those surveys that says how likely are you to refer XYZ company to a friend or colleague from a 1 to 10, that is a Net Promoter Score KPI. And what the company's looking for is, who are your promoters? Those that are rating a 9 or a 10 are your promoters. And then your 7 and 8s are your kind of middle of the road. Those are the ones that could leave at any time if you do something wrong. And then you have your detractors that are rating your company 6 or less. Human nature, we're not very honest in our scoring. We tend to score high unless we're really upset. So NPS is a big a KPI that you should be measuring from a customer survey standpoint. Other KPIs, I think, is like average response time to customers, maybe wait times on your phone call, response on quoting, conversion rates, things like that. So, you can collect as much data as you want, but I think those two top ones from a customer service standpoint can be collected automatically and should be collected often so that you're getting a gauge on how well you're doing as a company.
And kind of one final thought to wrap this up. Do you think the future of automation is going to do you think it can make the customer experience better, if the effort is put in, or do you think we're just going to move to pushing buttons and getting what we want?
I think there's got to be a balance, right? Because sometimes the customer experience is better if you can push a button. Um, Anybody that's been to a fast food chain recently, you walk in and you have a kiosk, or you can order from an app before you walk in, and that's an option that some people like. They'd rather, from a personality standpoint, some people would prefer just to interact with the device. And then some people don't. So I think what you have to do as a company is to give people options to choose their own adventure in your interactions. If you remember those books from, the 80s, I loved them as a kid. You flip to the different page and you pick how, you want the story to go. And I think that's the way that companies can be and provide better customer service through automation. Is just give the customer the experience that they're asking for and allow them to switch if they're dissatisfied with those automated systems. So, whether it's a great experience to have a quick automated process, or you need a more personalized service and interacting with, customer service representatives or technicians or, the professionals inside the company. So, it's definitely going to be a balance, and I think companies that give options are they're going to be the more successful ones, especially with AI moving forward. You can tell when AI is involved. I think somewhat for the most part today, and there's going to just be a certain percentage of the population that don't want that. They want to talk to a person. So got to give people options, and that will improve the overall satisfaction.
All right. Well, thank you for your insights on this. It's a fun topic to kind of speculate about what's to come and what's going on right now.
And I can assure you all that this was not generated by AI. Both Sherry and I are live people.
Yes,
Um,
definitely real.
at least for this week. I mean, next week might be a different story.
That would be another episode, or like, how far has the AI gone? Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks everybody for joining us.